Welcome to another special edition of Liquid Bullet Productions. Today our guest is an amazing guest. She's got an amazing talent. She's been on TV, she's a guest speaker, she's a medium. Obviously the medium work you do is exceptional and it's with the elite. She's helped solve some high case murders with the police in her work that she does. And she's, again, one of these people that's the only people that I know that can talk to the Krays. It's Susan Devere. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for letting us into your life, and we've got quite an interesting little podcast we've got about to get into today.
Hopefully it'll be interesting, and those that are going to be listening, well, yeah, they'll definitely find some information in.
100%, and I've been quite intrigued with your story. So tell us a little bit about what you do.
Right, so my existence of life, most of the people that would sort of know me from the past will be to do with the TV, to do with the theatre tours, to do with radio, and to roughly talking on this line of work, representing the spiritual world, roughly, all over the shop. So that's roughly what it started out as. Ended up with a completely different side to it, more on the serious side of life. Where I was invited by the governments of the world to bring in information regarding all of humanity's life, which was Agenda 21.
Wow, Agenda 21, now that sounds very interesting.
Well, that is everything you're living under right now.
Okay.
That's why the world is going to pot out there. I delivered it in 83. George Bush Senior signed it off into the world in 92, and this is everything of your everyday existence and what's going to become of humanity.
Really? It goes that deep?
It goes that deep.
And are you educated in this department? Is this your field?
It wasn't, no. I was just a normal everyday person with, just secondary education as a kid, and I came into life with this ability. But being born into the family it wasn't the right thing to be done. My father was one of the Billy Boys, come from Scotland down to London in the 30s.
Remember that name, yeah.
And on that, literally, I came into being, and I was born into something which literally was hell. And I was sort of the odd kid in the family. And my father's experience of life was to do with all the criminal world at the time back then. So he was with Jack Spot, as you'll know him to be, and then he moved on to Billy Hill, and then he was around the Krays, taught them quite a bit. My very early childhood, I can recall Reggie and Ron sitting on their laps here and there.
So you was in their life quite a young age?
Only as a 4-year-old, which meant nothing, because all that these were my uncles.
But they looked after you, though. You were still present. You knew they knew.
Yeah, I was always given half a crown. Always brought a piece of cake.
Yeah.
A bit of ice cream, and I used to just sit there with them in these Lions tea shops, coffee houses, whatever they were.
What are they?
Well, they were like what we have as Costa coffee shops today. That sort of thing.
Right, gotcha.
But back in the day, they were. It was a place that had obviously come about from the Second World War, where you could go and have a cup of tea and a piece of cake, and they used to.
And get half a crown.
Yeah, well, the boys used to use a lot of this. This is where they do all their meetings back in the day.
Really?
I didn't realise that at the time.
It wasn't in pubs and clubs and...
Well, it obviously was at the time, but for a 4-year-old in the daylight, I was taken to these places in and around London. I remember the Hammersmith one quite well. Used to be on the circular bit in the middle. I remember that one because only for one reason, that there used to be a doll's hospital in Hammersmith, and my father was always promising me to get my doll fixed. So that's the only reason why that stayed in there. Yeah. But no, I remember the boys sitting there, all of them, from what was the firm.
Who was there in them days? Who was it that was there in them days? Can you remember
I can only recall... I remember Reg and Ron. Well, I remember Ron more than Reg, actually, because Ron was very... No matter what you would know on Ron, he's got this caring nature. He literally would give you his last penny in his pocket, right? Different to Reg. Reg was very much where the money was going, how much they had coming in.
He was more the businessman side.
But Ron would, whatever came in, he would give it away. And I remember sitting on him, and he was a lovely man, and he reminded me so much of my own uncle. They were all born in the same time. And these were gentle men. There was no hardship of any kind. I can recall back then, I used to just toddle in with my father, and they all looked the same, the men. They were all suited and booted. They all smelt nice. And my father, I remember, never would leave the house without a clean shirt on, which literally, and so as a 4-year-old...
Was he always smart as well?
My dad, oh God, yeah.
Always smart, because it was the thing that he used to do in the day.
This is how, and I'm amazed how they managed to do it, considering they never had baths and showers like we do today.
True, very true.
And they never, from what I can recall, smelt, in any which way. Yeah. They were, to me, quite honourable, kind men, all of them.
Going back to your youth and sort of growing up in them days, what sort of upbringing did you have? Obviously, if your father was mixed up in that sort of thing, I know what goes on, obviously, because I was in that same sort of thing in my family. They, you only see so much of it, but when you're boys, you sort of see a hell of a lot more. But what was your sort of upbringing like, being around that sort of, these sort of people?
From what I can recall, I'm the baby of the family, right?
Okay.
So there was 4 of us,
yeah.
And the others literally, for some very bizarre reason, became the victims of it all. For me, it went all over my head. And what used to happen, the rows and the horrendous rows that were in the family with my father, because he was a womanizer, and there was some horrendous stuff. I can recall police being there, my father being arrested, going to prison, lots of little bits and things like this. But it's just tiny little bits, because something occurred one day. But Reg said something to my father, which I never found out for years and years, until after he died, my dad.
Yeah.
Which took us from London out into the suburbs. Okay. And so from that, where I was as a 5-year-old, that from then onwards I rarely saw them at all. So unless something really happened in the family between my mum and dad, I was never dragged off into London with my dad to be around these men. So it was only in the very early years of my life I was there.
Right. What about your schooling and stuff like that? What?
That was just normal, everyday primary stuff and secondary modern. I left school when I was 14 and a half.
You're smiling. Why are you smiling?
Yeah, well, I left school with nothing, and I can't believe that I've ended up doing what I do. Yeah. And with the people that have done it. It's been astounding. And this is all to do with spirit. I think if anyone had told me as a child my life would end up as it was, I would have never, ever believed them at all, because it's gone from the entertainment field into working with government authorities worldwide. And how do you manage to do that when you haven't got, firstly, a pot to piss in, and secondly, any letters after your name? And yet I have this amazing ability that they've all been after, where I can bring in stuff, know stuff, which has frightened a lot of them really to death, to think, oh my God, what does she know? Because where we are right now, they're watching to see what else I'm bringing in.
Really?
Oh God, yeah.
Wow, that is impressive. And this is the reason why you're on today, Susan, or Susie. What should we call you? Susie?
Susie,
I know,
yeah.
Is it Reggie or Ronnie calls you Susie?
Reg calls me Susie.
Right, okay.
He's known me as Susie.
He knows you as Susie.
Yeah.
Right, so this is the reason why you're on. So we'll get into that a little bit of sort of deeper stuff a little bit further down. But when did you first realise you had this special gift of the medium sort of side of things?
I was about a 4-year-old. 4 seems to be the marker
4?
for a lot, because this is Red Cloud, I'll turn him around a bit so you can see. This is Red Cloud. He walked into my bedroom as a 4-year-old and used to stand in the corner and terrify me to death, actually.
He looks a little bit...
He's a Native American.
A Native American,
right.
Because my son had an Aborigine sort of guide,
okay.
whatever they call them. So is that the same sort of thing?
No.
It's not?
No. Red Cloud in life led the whole of the Lakota Sioux. Full
right.
stop.
I'll have to look that up.
You can look it all up,
that one.
right? It's in history. And when I was a kid, not alone, I mean, it was a long time before we had a telly, but I grew up, the only things with cowboys and Indians were the John Wayne things, you know, on the Sunday afternoon films. Yeah. So having this Indian stood in the corner of the room was something of terrifying for me as a 4-year-old. And
what did you do?
I used to just hide under the covers, darling.
You didn't say anything to Mum and Dad or anything? No?
Well, they knew she was odd. I was always odd. I was always sitting on my uncle's laps and knowing stuff, all right? Yeah. So, not knowing how I knew it at all. I just knew something was going to happen, or I would see somebody and then somebody would turn up.
Did you tell anyone?
Yeah, my mum and my nan. My mum came from a very strong Irish Catholic family, and so doing this was not the thing to be doing as a young kid. Well, it was. That's all my childhood consisted of in the Catholic Church. Yeah. So my father, being a Scot, was more stuck with the women and the life pattern he'd chosen. My mum
stuck with all the women.
Yeah, was literally obviously trying to make it better by going to church and doing all that. But they took me to the priest when I was 9, and the priest said to them, if she does it in the church, that's from God. If she does it outside the church, it'll be from the devil. And for a 9-year-old, so I was very quiet as a child. Very quiet.
Right, so from 4 to 9, what happened in between that? Was there other instances that happened in between that?
Well, Red Cloud stood in the corner of my room for a good 6 months before he even uttered a word, and then one night he just said to me, "Hello, Susan," and that was it. And I think it was a case of realising this wasn't, or whatever this was going to hurt me. Then he just started talking on chit chat, nothing really, just to say how are you or how was your day.
Well, yeah, we had that feeling in our old house in Bromley. That was haunted. There were some very strange things that went on there, but we knew that it wasn't there to hurt.
Right.
So you do learn to live, and even in the house that I'm living in now, we've had some strange things going on. Yeah. Very strange, and like I've had lampshades start moving, and there's no one in the house. The doors all shut, there's no wind, and I've seen it, I've been there, and I've actually had it first hand, so...
Right. Well, with Red Cloud, it was bit by bit. He had the whole of my life, which I had no idea who he was at the time, because there was no way of finding anything else, out of any form of spirituality, because there was nothing in the bookshops. There was no bookshops. There was one little tiny thing in London, which housed a couple of books. If you went to the library, all you'd get is an occult book.
Really?
Yeah, there was nothing.
Really?
And so it was just me and him. And it stayed like that for a very long time. And my ability grew, not realising what I knew, how I knew it. I didn't know nothing. And just bit by bit, he would tell me something. And I asked him who he was, and he said he was Red Cloud, which still meant nothing.
No.
And off it all went, and I realised this was somebody who wasn't going to hurt me. Yeah. And I could see in his mentality as the man, he was very fatherly to me. He was very caring. Okay. And that's roughly how it stayed until my dad died.
Right, and did it change then?
Oh, it went enormous.
Did it?
Yeah.
Why? Do you know why?
Well, in all of our lives are programmed.
Okay.
So he was sitting, waiting on the program. So he'd wandered in when I was little. Yeah. Had built it up, to a point. The night my father died, my dad had 4 heart attacks before he went.
Okay.
And the last one, this is how old I am. I was out with one of my girlfriends. We'd gone to a disco, and in those days you had to be in at 10, not leave the house at 10. And so walking down the street to the house, all of a sudden I walked into a pair of hands which were his, and he stopped me in the street at 10 o'clock at night and said to me, "Susan, over the next 5 years your whole life's going to change." And it was what? And my friend looked at me and went, "What?" And that fell out of my mouth, what he said. And I walked up, put the key in the front door, and my dad was coming down the stairs having his last heart attack. And on that, within an hour of his passing, amazing things happened in the house, amazing things. And we were sitting, I used to have the kitchen where you could see the hallway and to the front door, and I remember sitting there with my mum, and my girlfriend was obviously still there as they took my dad off in the ambulance, and this was at 12 o'clock at night, near enough, and at 1 o'clock we were still sitting there in shock and relief, I might say, that we heard a key go in the front door, and the door opened all on its own, and then there was this terrific smell of my dad's tobacco.
Wow.
And then the chair he used to sit in to have his breakfast at the kitchen table, it all pulled out on its own. And we just sat there and froze.
All of you did, so everyone experienced this. So the next question was going to be, how did your family sort of feel about the sort of gift you've got and the stuff that went on?
Now, they will not entertain me at all.
They won't?
No, I'd been better to have said if I was gay, full stop. No, this is, when you come from this in a family, you will find this is very alienated. They
very
don't understand it.
Path.
It's a single path, and anyone who walks this, then all I would say is you are dependent on those who are walking with you from the spirit, because in the living, people don't understand it. They don't know how it works. They don't know where it comes from.
Yeah.
They think you're odd.
You've got plenty of trolls, I expect.
Oh, I have had. I was the original one after Doris Stokes.
Doris Stokes, we spoke about her earlier.
Yeah.
She goes, that brings back some memories when she
So I was Doris Stokes' little sidekick.
Right, okay, yeah. Did she teach you, or...?
I watched Doris. I've always watched the older mediums, because the older mediums used to have something which they don't have today. They had the knowledge of where it all started from, where it all came from.
Right, okay, yeah.
And of course the whole of the spiritualist movement was and still is a secret society.
Yes, I bet it is, yeah. Well, we're going to try and get as much out of you as possible today. The next thing I'm going to look at, where is this taking you? Where is this sort of like having this talent? Where is it taking you sort of in life? When, people sort of leave school at 16, 17, 18 and go and get a job. Where did that push you?
Well, all I was at that time, because I'm so old, the young girls of the day really are different, completely different to today, because all you wanted to be was a mum. That's all you were expected to literally go out and have a little job and then be a wife and a mother.
And make the dinner
so that's
I'm not
what
saying
was expected.
It's what was expected.
That's what it was. Yeah. So I never had any ideas at all, nothing whatsoever. I used to watch the mediums in the spiritualist churches to see how it was, but because I was so young, they wouldn't entertain me. They knew I had this amazing ability.
Oh, they know, you can tell.
They allowed me to do it, but not for the public.
Right, okay.
And I used to floor them. And they used to say, so they used to say, how do you do it? And I'd go, I don't know. It just happens.
So
I had no idea whatsoever.
Really?
No.
Wow.
And you'll find 99% of them out there are still like that. They have no idea where it comes in from, what it's all about. So where I sat with it, it was a case of trying to find out exactly what I had, instead of just listening to the people saying, you've got a gift, and this ain't no gift. All right,
So that's quite funny you saying that, because it's normally been classed as having a gift. And you're saying it's a gift.
No.
That's quite just astonishing, really, to hear that.
Because this is sought after, but when I've done so much on this, on trying to find the nitty-gritty of how it all has come about, it's been astounding.
Yeah, you go quite even further, deeper than all the others, don't you? And there is another side that you've sort of investigated in the spiritual world, isn't there?
Because of I wasn't happy with what I was being told, let alone watching and hearing what the dead were saying, and I could see quite early on there was something amiss with it all. And I just started with Red Cloud, actually, to the old girls that were literally the ones that had started the movement in this country with Red Cloud, because Red Cloud was the one that Spirit used to bring it all about in 1914.
Okay. Is that a well-known fact?
Yeah, that's a well-known fact. The whole thing was born on it.
Right.
There was two sisters that had come in from America called the Fox Sisters, and they were thrown out of the country for being fraudulent. So what you'll know in the Victorian times, you've heard of seances where you'll see them all sitting around the table. That's what these girls started, right? So they got the Victorians sitting there, was the biggest thing of the day, because it was like, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Everybody wanted to talk to a dead person.
Really?
So that's exactly how it all began, right?
Okay.
So on that, when they were thrown out, on the start of the First World War, they pushed Red Cloud through the door, and Red Cloud built the whole of the start of the movement. So at that point, none of this would have happened. It was all in closed shop. It was all still a secret society. So you had to be somebody to have an audience with him, or a medium. Okay. It was never open to the public at all. So back in the day, in the 30s and the 40s, those that used to come and see Red Cloud, and Estelle, who was his first medium, I'm his second medium, was Houdini, and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Wow.
And Estelle, and all of them were all great friends together, and they started the whole thing in London, which is now, I think, called the Psychic School of Studies or something.
Is that like the governing body of it? Or
that's what they started to help this to grow. And so Red Cloud and Estelle used to stand in the Royal Albert Hall night after night, and all in the old paper, which was called the Pictorial back then.
I remember that name.
Which became, later on, it became the News of the World. Right, and even in the Evening Standard, they used to write things night after night of everything he used to say to the world. And the King of Greece, which was Prince Philip's grandfather, would never do anything for his country unless he spoke to Red Cloud first.
Really?
It was that powerful.
So he was a very powerful person then.
They knew for what was being delivered was to do with world stuff, and this was the main reason behind all of this. Back then, and still is today. Okay,
so the journey you've sort of been on, and you've over the years, what sort of rewards has that given you?
Not a lot. The reward I've had, I wouldn't say it has ever been a financial thing. I've never looked at it as a financial thing. The gain it's given me is the insight to humanity and what we're doing here, and how it all works for us, and where humanity's going. So what shifted from standing in a theatre to talking to someone sitting in the seat saying, I've got your mum or your dad here, has shifted right across to now saying, this is what's actually going to happen to you all.
Really?
Yeah.
Has it gone that deep now?
It's that deep now.
Is there many other people that practice that?
There's five like me on the earth.
Really? Only 5?
There's only 5.
Wow.
The 4 others are not allowed out beyond. We're getting into different matters here. There are 2 rings of what they class, I'll call them as rings as fire. There's a middle ring which we can't enter at all. The outer ring is where I stand on the outside of it, where I'm privileged because I've got a seal over my head. I'm able to say the things that they've allowed me to say for one reason and one reason only, is that we're at an end of a timeline. And when you get to an end of a timeline, the truth can surge up to the public, to the humanity, to the people.
So do the prices.
Yeah. So exactly. But that's nothing to what's coming.
Yeah.
So where we sit now, in everything that I work in, from big military, so I'm sure you'll understand there are military and then there's military, and the ones that I work with, we all know, and the remote viewers, that there is nothing, and I mean nothing, after 2030.
Right, saying, what does that mean
Well,
in layman's terms?
Yeah, in layman's terms, that we're all gone.
Really?
Yeah, seriously.
This has been predicted before though, hasn't it?
That what I perceive will happen is what the world is waiting for. You're going into a massive shift here, firstly of consciousness, secondly to all of everyday living here, and they call it the Great Reset, and on that's where they're driving everything.
I think COVID started that off, didn't it? That sort of made the shift start and the change of the whole people's lives that thought that could never happen. I think that started.
Well, it didn't happen.
Chain.
Well, it didn't happen, darling, because you're living in a time where you'll see everything, you'll perceive everything around you is real, and everything is not.
Right.
Full stop.
Okay, so we know COVID wasn't real. It's just
COVID was the
money,
first hoax, right?
Yeah, right. Okay, it's a hoax. Yeah.
And to do with the COVID and all the vaccination program and everything, the paperwork was all lying there. You can trace it all the way back. Goes all the way back to 29 when the first paperwork was shown. And the actual vaccine has come from the Second World War, and it was Hitler's scientists who had created it.
Wow.
So where you've got all of that from the Second World War, what the Americans did, they hung 150 of his scientists, kept the best of the best, who had already started producing the vaccine program to what it's really sat for.
Yeah.
And literally kept him alive to do loads of things, the Americans. And Hitler didn't die on the Second World War. He remained alive until he was 70.
Really?
And he lived in America.
Stashed away somewhere, another location, a different look.
Yeah.
See, honestly, when you sort of talk about stuff like that, I think everyone can relate to that and everyone can feel that there is a change going on. I certainly can. Even long before we had a chat first of all, when you sort of mentioned that. Yeah. There were things changing, and it has been.
When I put Agenda 20, when I did Agenda 21, I tried to tell the world then, because it was all
explain that in a little bit more detail. Agenda 21.
Right. So Agenda 21 is set up to tell you where and what they're going to do with you all. Right. Firstly, it's gone now, but when the elite work, the elite consists of 14 families, and they've been born into existence all through their bloodline to be able to control the outside of the world. Right. And
government people, or just
in some body? Respects, the ones that you're
like
seeing.
Area 51 or whatever it is in America, sort of.
But there's levels, because what you're seeing out, like you would see as your government people, these are the elected from the elite. Right. Right, and the major elite, which is something completely else, which for me to explain it all, actually are in the earth. Okay. So there are levels.
Right, that goes very deep.
Right, and I work from the deepest to bring it up and out. Right. So where you are seeing your governments across the world working and doing X, Y, Z, it's what they've been fed into. And what I've fed into them, where they need to go, what needs to happen. And that's what the people are after, so they are ahead of the game.
There's not a lot of people that know about this, is there?
You'd be amazed now.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it becoming more common?
When I did Agenda 21 back in 83, I tried to tell the world, because it was all sitting there. It used to sit on the EU website, but it was so thick. Obviously, people weren't never going to turn all the pages to go and read the damn stuff, right? Because why would it ever happen? It was Looney Tunes time, and here you all are. And so since it's here, the amount that have started looking into, oh my God, but what's happened to the people? they've woken up to realising that the life that you're in is actually not the life that it should be. And something then also happened way back in time. So what the elite have done and have been told to do, they've built massive things here for you lot as humanity to get under. So firstly, it was the religious world, and then secondly, it became the spiritual world.
Right, okay.
And so where they've built it has always been to control the masses. So where you're sitting, you are looking at, firstly, the elite want to take out as many lives here because the world's overpopulated. And so they've got an XYZ number in their minds that they're going to bring it down to,
right.
Which they will complete without
They could bloody go with COVID, didn't they?
Well, it's still running. It's still running. Yeah. And so you've still got all the other things still toddling in behind it.
Wow. So when we go into this in a little bit sort of deeper, where does it go from here? Where can you say that at the moment? I mean, what are we looking at?
What, the future?
Well, I mean, the changes happening now. I mean, is it a quick thing, a long thing?
It's a long thing.
It's a long thing.
So this is a prominent year where they needed to get everything set in. So even though you are having a so-called war with Putin and the Iranians, that's a set-up job to bring about so you don't have a pot to piss in.
Well, that's worked.
Very much so, because that's why they all signed off on it. And this is why these leaders come together as they just have done to sign off other stuff as they go. So what they intend to do, religion is going to become a thing of the past, and they've already signed off to bring one religion to the world under one banner, which is for all different religions here, is you all being sold off down the river, which is horrendous.
I know that. I'm definitely feeling that feeling. But there's also another side of it that you've been helping the elite with, sort of murders that have happened.
Well, the murder stuff that firstly happened all on its own, where the girls, because the first biggest one that I ever did was to do with the Frederick West girls.
Really?
Yeah.
The Fred West. Yeah. You was involved in that.
Yeah.
Wow, my wife loves that.
Right.
A story.
So,
Loves the story of
and that was
how it all happened.
The girls just turned up one at a time. I only had 3 of them, and it took me months to figure out what they were talking about.
Well, they come to you.
Yeah, and I have this thing with me that they just seem to turn up and they'll just start talking. And even though it was nothing that I've ever wanted to ever get into or to look into, it was just as it happened.
Really?
And the first one came was Jenny, and she started telling me things, and because what the Wests had done, they'd cut these bodies up, and I was trying to figure out what she was trying to tell me. It took me ages, and then another one come, and then another one, and with the 3 of them together, they pinned it all together, and that was the start of everything to do with the Frederick West case. And yeah,
did you bring that to? I mean, there was obviously other things that sort of brought that to a head, but was you play part of that brought maybe awareness of what actually happened? It could be
there's more. There's loads. There was 19. I've had 19 that they took, which have never been found.
19.
And I know one of them was a boy, and I knew.
But on top of what have been found.
Yeah. One of the girls was.
Blimey.
Buried alive, actually.
You're joking?
No.
Wow.
They thought she was dead and she wasn't. But so, because when you do murder cases, what tends to happen, you can't just be. There's a lot to a dead person coming in to say XYZ that I'm a dead person and somebody's killed me, right? So what has to happen? You have to go back onto the timeline, because what I have to do is set them in motion where I am looking through their eyes so I can see the actual events of what's occurring, who's doing the deed. Right. And so where the West girls came in from, these poor girls, they were quite willing to do it. But if I'm going the other way round, which I've been asked many times, to open a cold case and then to go into spirit to wake them up
Yeah.
That then is something different.
Why have they never, while you're on that subject, why have we never heard about the additional people?
Well, the police do know there are more, but they've never opened them up because it's obviously gone on. And I think when I did tell them that Fred West would never make trial, which he didn't. He hung himself.
Yeah.
And I know she's still banged up. So from what I know from what Spirit said, that she's not got a very pleasant death coming for her, which is obviously her reward. And the girl stepped in for a reason and a one reason only, to stop it in its tracks. Otherwise, I think they would have kept going.
What other people have you sort of worked with famous-wise? I've got famous names or infamous, shall we say?
Oh, well, the list is endless. I've had wonderful chats with Bobbie Moore.
Oh, right, yeah.
He's come. He has come quite often. I have had the greatest one that has outshined all of them has been Martin Luther King.
Wow.
And he has come in and we've sat for hours talking on stuff to do with humanity.
Yeah.
Because he's come in on that level for humanity to see how humanity is walking the walk since he's toddled through.
Yeah.
I've done loads of royals. I've done from Michael Jackson to Cilla Black to all that. So they come in different levels.
Yeah.
But it isn't that I've gone looking for them. They just wandered in on
you.
their own. When
Really?
when I'm working, they've wandered in if Red Cloud has opened the door to that level. But on the entertainment lot, as I'd call it, they will have only XYZ to say on that level. Okay. And I found it to be more interesting with the higher lot that literally are talking on world stuff or have had stuff to do. I've spoken to Einstein once, but he did tell me to shut up.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And myself and Red Cloud, back in the day, we had a couple of audiences with Stephen Hawkins.
Right.
Because he, obviously being this massive scientist, kept it open to what was out there. So I'm waiting on Stephen still to toddle in. There's loads that I would love to talk to, but they haven't ventured in at all yet. Well,
you can't, they have to come to you.
Oh, I could drag them in, but I won't. No, I like them to walk in, yeah.
All right, well, let's sort of go back into the Krays side of things, who you speak to on a regular basis. But like you said, is it Ronnie or Reggie or both of them that you chat with?
It's been Reg near enough from the very beginning. Reg seems to have taken the lead. I have spoken to Ron. Ron has come. We've sat. Ron is very amusing, and I found him to be quite a gentle soul. Actually, I know he's got mental health stuff, but he has got this gentle side to him, and he'll wander in, and he'll always say to me, "Have you got a cup of tea, Susan?" So I go and put the kettle.
So you're
on.
Susan to him, but Susie to Reggie.
And I'll make a cup of tea for all three of us, and we sit down there and they'll chat.
You physically make the tea?
Yeah, I physically make the tea. And Ron used to like to have a bit of cake. When he'd turn up, he'd say to me, "Have you got a bit of cake, Susan?" And I don't eat cake very much. And so I used to have to end up buying a slab of cake or something and cutting it up just in case he'd turn up. But he hasn't come for a long time.
And you will wind up eating the rest of the cake if he doesn't turn up.
It goes in the bin, to tell you the truth.
Who do you talk to the most?
Reg. Reg has made the beeline in, which has literally set everything that I know now. Okay. And I've been astounded from the very beginning, where Reg walked in, because from the very first time when they walked in, you know, I just sat there firstly in shock, but in awe, because they were all suited and booted how my father used to look.
Yeah.
And it took my breath away. And this was in 2004 when they first come through the door.
I was going to say, was that back in 2004? Yeah.
So.
And that was the first instance. Tell me how that happened, because you briefly mentioned something earlier downstairs that they come into another conversation and
well, I was on tour.
You got Susie coming in part.
Right. I'm on tour with my last big tour I've ever done.
Yeah.
And I had to hire someone to put the stuff out on the stage, you know, roadie and that.
Yeah.
And we were just sitting there this one afternoon where they'd put some stuff and we were having a cup of tea and just nothing, general chit chat. And this guy sat next to me, and very strongly I felt Bethnal Green in my head. It sounded Bethnal Green.
Had you ever been to Bethnal Green before?
No.
Have you ever heard of it?
Well, only vaguely. It wasn't somewhere, no. I've been there since.
Yeah.
But I haven't, no.
So just a feeling that come into you.
I knew from my dad and what he had spoken about.
Yeah, yeah.
So I knew the name. And what had happened, this chap sat next to me, and when I said, do you have a link with Bethnal Green? He looked at me and he said, why? I said, because I do, meaning my father and his connections. And he said to me, what's your connection? And I said, it's the Krays. And he looked at me and I said, so what's yours? And he said, my uncle was Frank Mitchell.
Right, okay.
And literally, with the pair of us, we just stopped. You could feel it in the room as though something massive had happened then.
Who for the viewers, who was Frank Mitchell?
Frank Mitchell was one of the people that the Krays killed.
Right. One that we don't know that they killed, is it?
Oh no, they will admit they killed them. Yeah,
They will
yeah.
admit.
Oh yeah. I even know where Frank's body is, because when I do murder cases, I'm out for bodies.
Really?
I'm looking for the bodies, yeah.
So yeah, the rest of that little story about they've come into your life
So
was at what point?
the Krays.
Yeah.
Well,
you
so
was chatting.
with this chap who's, you know, and I'm thinking, hello, even though my management through my life pattern had hooked into Laurie O'Leary due to Doris Stokes.
Yeah.
Laurie was, you know, the Reg and Ron's best friend. They'd grown up together, and Laurie had a massive impact in their world. He used to go and see them while they were all banged up.
Right.
And he was very dependent on them, as well as the Krays being dependent on him to do whatever was asked, you know.
Yeah.
And Laurie had an amazing clientele list, roughly, in the showbiz world. And he ended up bringing a lot of them into the clubs that they owned.